I'm gonna record a conversation, a message, or have you posted the message for the Facebook page?
I'm writing it right now.
Great. And then if you can just post a video or something on Instagram too as well. Um, while you're doing that, let's get started. Hi, Stacey.
Oh,
I'm excited to chat and just record this, honestly. Less pressures than the live, so I apologize gravely that we can't go live.
I completely understand. We have very we had we have had very similar issues with QC and PI, and in terms of trying like doing live events on Zoom with face integration. It's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. But you know what? I'm excited, and you know what? We have the amazing Stacey Rose with us here today, joining the ACC for Chapter 2 of the Sit Down series. Stacey Rose is a Charlotte-based, award-winning, nationally produced playwright. Her work celebrates and explores Blackness, Black identity, body politics, and the dilemma of life as the other. Stacey has held fellowships, residencies with the Arts and Science Council, the Dramatists Guild, the Playwright Center, Sundance Theater Lab, the Goodman Theater, the Civilians, and Toft Lake Center. She is a recipient of a 2019 Virginia B. Tolman Foundation Women's Commissioning Grant in partnership with Rattlesnake Playwrights Theater and an Alfred P. Sloan Foundation Commission in partnership with Manhattan Theater Club. She is currently a staff writer for 911 on Fox, starring Angela Bassett. Stacey, along with director Martin Damian Wilkins, co-founded the Queen City New Play Initiative to support local and Southern playwrights in the creation of new work for the stage. You can follow QCNPI at QC New Play on Instagram and Twitter, and at facebook.com/Queen City New Plays. Ladies and gentlemen, and those who identify as otherwise, the amazing, amazing, amazing Stacey Rose.
Hi everyone. How are you today? How are you feeling today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you feeling today, Stacey?
Oh God. I guess a word would be free. No, I got my vaccine and very safely, of course. I traveled to Chicago to one, to kind of hunker down and work on this draft that I need to work on for Monday, and two, to check in with a friend of mine who just got Ken just was announced as the new artistic director of Victory Gardens Theater here in Chicago. So very excited, very exciting time. And it feels free and different. Feels like kind of like the thaw is coming, and hopefully things are getting better in terms of the pandemic. So yeah.
Great, great, great. So I'm gonna ask, when did you first start out writing? What was the spark? What led to it? That first moment saying, when did you discover the joy of writing? Let's start there.
Oh, I would.
Oh, Stacey, you were frozen for a bit.
Hold
Oh,
on one second. Something here. Technology is not on our side today.
it's
Is this
not.
better?
Yes, it is. So when did you first start out writing? What was the spark?
So when I was a kid who always kind of was interested in toys that were not deemed for girls. Like I always wanted a camera, a stethoscope, and typewriters specifically. I love typewriters, and I loved reading a lot as a kid. I had asthma really bad when I was a kid, so I spent a lot of time indoors. And I would write like little stories for myself and things like that. And then me and my best friend growing up would write. Ironically, her name is Naomi Wallace, but she is not the playwright. But her and I would write these little ditties, and people would read them in school. But I never took it seriously. It was it was just the simple joy of crafting story and the ritual of sitting down and writing something that was really the initial draw for.
So when was that moment that you knew, okay, I am a playwright, I want to pursue playwriting and screenwriting? When was that moment for you?
I I was so well. I didn't even know about. Honestly, I didn't know about screenwriting or television until I was in high school. So that's that's I was 37 at the time. That was around 2013. And when I got to grad school at NYU, they teach the three disciplines. They teach screen and play and television writing. But playwriting came at a really painful time in my life. I was divorcing and I decided to go back to school. And I wound up going back to school for theater. And in the process of being in that program at UNC Charlotte, I developed a kind of skill for playwriting. And I was encouraged by my professor there to kind of take it on more seriously. And I ultimately did. And here we are. But that was, and even then I was very skittish about calling myself a playwright, right? Because I thought one had to have plays produced. Like I thought very specific things had to happen before I could call myself a playwright. And now I know that that is utter bullshit. Like if you're a playwright, you're a playwright. If you say you're a playwright, but so yeah, over the course of I once I graduated UNC Charlotte, I was in Charlotte about 6 or 8 years, producing theater, writing stuff, doing a very little bit of acting. And I got a push to, I got a push to go to grad school. And that's where things kind of took off for me. And that's when, as I learned the different forms, I became interested in creating for both stage and screen and television when I went to NYU.
Do you have any mentors or people you looked up to while you were a young writer in undergrad, before even grad school, like UNC, just went back, started study theater and finding
What's
the joy of
funny is
playwriting?
I was never a young theater undergrad. So I started my undergraduate degree in theater. Like I had a very unconventional career. I didn't get to grad until I was 30. And so at the time, it was funny. I was just kind of studying what was put in front of me. I can remember reading Susan Laurie Parks for the first time and being particularly struck by her work. And how strikingly different it was than everything else we were studying. And knowing that I wanted more of that, and knowing that, out of Jersey, you had like Amiri Baraka, and you had those people writing really Black plays and things like that. So I knew those kind of seeds were planted while I was in undergrad. But it was when I got to, I'm very fortunate in that I got to meet a lot of the playwrights that I ultimately came to admire as humans and outside of their work. And like this morning, I was talking to Dominique Morisseau about how I met her for the first time and how like grounded I thought she was. And so I was fortunate enough to study with Susan Laurie because I did know her work before I knew her, and work with Lynn Nottage because I got to work with her on She's Got It. And I admire these women and I admire these playwrights more as humans because I know them as human beings. And admire everything they have to balance to have those careers. So in terms of other writing influences, randomly, Stephen King. I've been reading Stephen King since I was like 7 years old. So yeah, like when I shouldn't have been reading Stephen King. I told you I was a kid who read a lot of Poe when I was young.
Oh my gosh, I read a lot of Poe growing up too in that way.
It was so good. And then there is Toni Morrison, the incomparable.
Mm.
Um, Knowing her, and again, knowing their walk and knowing what they had to do to create actually endears me more than any work does. But with Toni, for me, it is the work and her walk, because she came to doing the thing late. Right? She'd been an editor, she was doing all of this other work. And then she finally, like, she made the same sacrifice I made. I had a 14-year-old son when I decided to go to grad school, and she had small children and left them with her family in order to pursue writing. And it was a similar sacrifice that I just fell in love with her. There's also Octavia Butler, just prophetic in her vision, and very sharp and clear on the future that she saw, based on the future that she was living in. And I think that I not even intentionally, just from just some internalized influence that she has on me, I write that I find myself writing in very similar ways sometimes. I don't know if I'm as sharp and prophetic as she is, but she was, her word, and I say is, and she's, she's an ancestor, but I mean, she is just present, you know what I mean? Like, particularly now. So those are folks who light the way for me. Rod Serling, also, I should say that. Twilight Zone, Rod Serling, he wrote 92 episodes of that show. Same kind of social commentary under the guise of like the I want to say it's not horror. It's kind of like a psychological thriller, like Black Mirror, that thing. But yeah, that is kind of my sphere of influence, as it were.
So I love how, like, when you talked about your influences, you talked about their walk and their work. And now I wonder, as someone getting the honor to interview you here today, how would you describe your walk as an artist and your work in the now?
So everything I write is either something that has frustrated me at some point, or something that has given me joy, or something that started off as a question that I had for myself or for the world. And I always, like, writers are typically figuring their shit out on the page. And as I continue to figure certain things out, I shift focus to the things that I don't understand as well. And I think at the end of it, if your work, if your plays aren't making you a little bit better person than before you started them, you really, should examine why you're making the work, right? I think I benefit from the fact that I came to theater so late, and I came so untainted by what folks thought was great art, right? Like, I never connected theater in the way a lot of folk, like in the beginning, I should say, I never connected to it the way other folks had, like, specific investments and, the greats and the canon. That shit mattered to me. Like, what mattered to me, stuff that hit me here. Like, the first play that, like, doubled me over was Born Back by Debbie Tucker Green. That woman can write. Like, that woman can write, and it will cut you in half. And it comes from something, right? And I think that if we are not invested, like, if we are so invested outward and not looking within and not looking at the stories that are uniquely ours to tell, we're doing ourselves a disservice as artists. And you can just tell from the way she writes that she is just, she's plugged into something. there is something she's scratching at, even with Generations. 30-minute play rocked. Like if you can write a play and you can get a whole, you can make the play, the story of the play matter, but the play itself is a vehicle for something larger. Like that's massive right there. And so, but it all starts with who we are and how grounded we are in who we are, and how much time we spend getting to know ourselves. And I've done a lot of that over the years. So the work I create, every single play I've ever written is at its core something I was trying to work out.
I love how you talk about the play as a vehicle, and in every vehicle, there's always a mechanic and like mechanicals, if you will, referencing Midsummer. There that go behind that process. So I wonder for you, like when you're writing your play, and when I know you talked about the writer you just mentioned, Debbie Tucker Green, when she's connected to something in your process. Can you talk about your process and like how do you, even in times when you're like writing and you're losing stamina, how do you find something to connect to when you're at a blockage as well? So really the dynamicism of process, yeah.
Yeah, because Dom and I were talking about this morning. I have this thing for me in process that I think is really interesting, in that I will walk around with an entire play in my head. I know how it happens. I know in broad strokes how we get from beginning, middle to end. And I won't write it. And I don't know why, right? Like if I'm not on a deadline, I just won't sit down and write it. It's there because I'm doing a million other things, right?
Right.
But when I sit down to write it, that play could have like the same thing happened with the play for NYU. I had the idea in my mind. I was holding on. I had the title first. The titles come to me first. I was like, okay, so the name of the play is The Danger. And that was it. Like I can remember distinctly, I was walking down Broadway and I was with a friend of mine, and we might've been going to lunch or something. I was like, yeah, the name of it is The Danger. And that was it. And I held on to that thread. And again, the play kind of writes itself in my mind as I continue to think about it. And then something happens where I'm given a deadline or whatever. It's usually a deadline though, that I have to sit my ass down and write it. And I can vomit it out in like 2 or 3 days. But wow, the amount of time, and when I tell you, it's not just 2 weeks, it's like time. I've sat and thought about a play for a year. Like, it's just like, I don't love that about my process. It's not enjoyable. It's actually very anxiety producing. So I've tried to shift to just putting a little down on the page day to day and kind of finding that rhythm. Like the pandemic, one, pulled me because I had a whole other career. I was working in healthcare. And this is the first year where I'm like completely done with healthcare, completely.
Right.
And so I'm learning how to have a process outside of balancing it around a million things. Like I have the time to sit and write 2 to 3 hours a day now. I kind of have to discipline myself into that. And I don't even know if that's the process that's going to work for me. But a lot of times I just hold on to a play, I hold on to an idea, and then I vomit it all out. And then when I get stuck, I do this thing. Again, it's all panic. Like I say all of this to say I really need to change my process. So I'm doing the thing I do now where I have this play that I intentionally set up a workshop for, so I would have to have a draft, because I started this in 2017 and here we are in 2021 and it's not finished. And it's because everything else was happening. And I just never got back to it. But this is a play I know beginning, middle, and end of this play. I know what's going to happen. I know how it, shakes out. I know what the relationships are at the end. I know, but I haven't sat down to write. Like I've got about 50 pages of text. I think it's like, I think it's maybe an 80 or a 90-minute play, maybe. 90 is, I think, maybe not even that. But I do this thing where I reread it, and this is what Dom called me on, and it's true. I go back and I start editing myself on those first 50 pages instead of just finishing the damn script.
Right.
So I'm trying to, literally after this, I'm gonna go get myself some dinner. And I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna not reread the first 50 pages. I'm gonna go back to the last 2 pages and I'm gonna jump in and write forward until I have a script for my actors on Monday. But having that said, that books that really support me in my process are, again, Stephen King on Writing is a book I read yearly. Just because of the plain and simple, straightforward way he talks about the craft of really a lot. And then I also like to read Bird by Bird because it really gets me out of my head when I feel like when I'm facing a white page. And it really makes me sit down and write 2 or 3 pages. And then those 2 or 3 becomes, 5 or 10. And that 10 becomes 10 and 20. So it's just that. And writing for TV has demanded that my process shift because I am working with a team of writers. And particularly with COVID, we're putting together episodes. And I have a leg of the episode to write that relies on that other writers before and after are relying on me knowing what's happening in this section to do what they have to do. So it's an ever shifting process, but I stay open, and I hope to now, as I'm finally officially a full-time writer, shifting what that process is into something more healthy and anxiety producing.
That's amazing. It's just like, I don't know. I'm excited. Well, we gonna be waiting for the draft and we're waiting for whatever's coming next. Cause I love that you talked about when you see a white page, and I'm gonna flip this into a new question now. How have you in places where you have been the only person of color, or the only person of color in a very white space, where you have felt like you are a living person on a white page, how have you written against that white page to birth your work? And how have you written within? So basically functioning in spaces of whiteness in the American theater and the American arts, and writing against that.
Yeah, baby, that started years ago for me. I was always somebody, only Black kid in the middle of a whole lot of white. That started in 3rd grade. It was probably 2 or 3 of us. We got sent to a gifted and talented school. I don't put it in quotes because I doubt the gifted and talented, but that's what the title was. And so got sent off to that school and not really even told why I was sent or what ability I had or anything. They just kind of took me out of my all Black neighborhood school and dropped me in the middle of the sea of whiteness. And I adjusted, and I made myself small and not as Black, and got into the things that they were into and all. And so as I got older, I middle school, high school. My middle school and high school, I was in New Jersey. It was a very diverse body of students. I went to one of the biggest high schools in the country. Shout out to E High, Elizabeth High School in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I had a graduating class of 900 people that were every race and ethnicity you can imagine. So I had that moment where I really experienced it in my adult life. In the beginning was my life as a respiratory therapist, which began when I was 23. And I worked in Charlotte. And faced almost losing my career over racism very early in my career. Like I hadn't had my license for maybe 2 years when I had gotten accused by a coworker of chasing her to her car with a gun. To this day, I have not had my hands on a gun. But it's just that, like, navigating that and never feeling like you can fully trust your white friends, particularly when they drink. I don't like, they used to laugh at me. I'm like, I don't be around drunk white people like that, because y'all get real loosey goosey and then it all goes to hell. We're having a bonfire. Good luck and have fun. You're happy to come. So it's just like, I've always been navigating that. So by the time I landed at NYU and to deal with theater's version of it, I was like, this is dumb, and they are not as important as they think they are. Like, because I had worked in healthcare and I've like literally saved lives. Like, I mean, that's not even a boast. It's a fucking fact. Like, I've got lives that I've saved on. So it's just like, I think having been a respiratory therapist for so long and then stepping into the American theater, I was ready, because it was like, y'all are really not as important as you think you are. Like, not at all. And so knowing that a lot of the stuff didn't, like, I really had, like, I will say I was like kind of insecure about the writing and insecure about my lack of knowledge coming in, because they were like throwing all the, like, everybody was like all up in arms because Annie Baker was teaching our playwriting class, and Annie Baker, a thesis class. And I know who the fuck was when I pulled up, like, when I went to NYU. I was 37. I had a kid. Like, I had a kid in high school. What are you talking about? Like, I lived in Charlotte. It's not a thing. But I like Annie. She was awesome to learn with. But, you know, getting that perspective, like the hype machine that the white American theater makes for itself sometimes is very, very interesting to me. And so I struggled a little bit initially because I was the only Black person in my class at NYU. That was like a whole, that was a whole thing, because like I came in being underestimated. Like,
yes.
Oh, Black woman, who's old and know much about theater. And very shortly I was writing my ass off. And they're like, oh, like, who is this Black woman?
who is the Black woman that I doubted when she first started?
So when I start winning all of their shit, it was like, oh, she right. I'm like, yeah. And
writer and all.
I don't have the same investment in being part of a canon as I do just making the work that I love and making the work that makes me feel good writing, right? Yeah. So I think for me, navigating that space meant being me harder.
Yeah.
Like, myself a little bit harder, like not code switching when I didn't want, like, it's so funny. I don't think the people in my writers room sometimes know what to do with me, because I can be real down south and real plain and just talk plain, but also write my ass off. And it's just, and I love surprising people in that way. And I think being myself harder has made me a better artist overall, and has allowed me to kind of better navigate this, this system of bullshit that they have in place. I mean, the pitfalls and perils come when you are in a city like New York and you're pitted against all the other Black folks for these opportunities, and they put everybody in a scarcity mindset, and we battle each other instead of battling the systems.
Yes.
So I've definitely fallen prey to that. And it wasn't an easy time. That's why I was so glad that I got to spend time at the Playwright Center, because it just was, the Playwright Center literally kind of shifted everything for me in terms of just gave me time and space to really sit with and examine who I was as an artist without the New York gate and without this pressure to achieve what everyone else was.
Were you scared to leave the New York gaze, or?
Well, not the New York gaze. I was scared to come to the Midwest because I had no idea. My Black life intended on being in the Midwest for anything. Literally, never even dreamed, didn't cry. But that has been my life, right? Like everything I don't think I'm gonna do, I'm doing it. Like I just didn't think I'd ever be writing for TV, and here I am. I never thought I would spend 3 years living in the Midwest. Not only that, love it, but I did.
Oh.
Like, yeah, it's been a ride. But just staying true to who I am as much as humanly possible, and being honest with myself and allowing my self to have shitty feelings, like feeling jealous and being able to say that, or feeling like I feel like blank, like I feel like blank got that opportunity and I wanted that opportunity and I feel shitty about that. Like being able to name exactly how I'm feeling has always, it keeps me grounded.
In the name of naming how exactly you're feeling, is that where like sometimes an idea of a play or script may come from, or where do you where does the birth of the idea start?
It can be like, I promise you, every play is completely different. Quite honestly, like my play Legacy Land, the seed for that was planted probably over 8 years ago when we found a deed in my grandma's belongings. I kind of like, the deed was like, the land was supposed to go to my mom, and none of us ever knew about it. So she never got the land, and the state got, like, it was a whole other thing. So that play came from, because it felt like a story. Like it didn't make any sense that deed would have went to my mom. So what was that person purchasing by giving that deed? You know what I mean? So there was that. America came while I was I was in the DG fellowship, and I just saw these 4 characters, and they were actors, and they were doing a historical reenactment of the extinction of Black people, even though Black people weren't extinct. Like that's what I saw. And I had all of these like little, like I wrote around a lot of things until I got to that. So everything kind of comes from wherever it comes from. And sometimes it comes from being challenged, like my play As Is. I was a member of this collective called the Brooklyn Generator. I was in their season 6 of writers, and what they do is they challenge a writer to go off and write a play in 30 days. And so before you write the play, you are challenged to, you are offered the ability to have like a kickoff party. So at the kickoff party, I knew I wanted to write something about big Black women. I didn't specifically know what, so I had all of these questions ready for women to answer anonymously on Post-it notes. They did that. I went off and I did the thing I always do. I started writing 15 pages, completely let time fly by, and then the deadline bit me, and I wrote the play in a weekend. And it is like really, like it's one of my it's gotten me so much work, and I've barely touched that play in terms of workshopping it or anything like that. So you just never know where the thing or the play that lands with people is going to come from. And you don't want to assume it could come from a writing exercise. It can come from a line of like something your mother says to you, or it can come from something a stranger says. And I just don't take for granted anywhere that it comes from. And sometimes like I have the notes app on my phone, and sometimes I'll hear something and I'll write it down, and I won't come back to it for a year or 2. And then I'll come back to it like, oh, I remember this, and let me play with it a little bit. So it's kind of, inspiration is everywhere. And the best inspiration I'm not looking for.
In that place of like where like of hidden inspiration and inspiration being all around us, and I love the way you're talking about your ideas, because it feels like it's like you're sitting and you're watching cars drive by and you like pick which car you want. And I wonder, how do you remain still in that moment? Like in this place, like, because I know, like, for me as a writer, sometimes, like, I'm like, there's too many ideas in my head right now. Like, it's screaming very much only, like, for me at least, because, like, I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. So, like, you create friends. That's how, like, I draw some of my writers of, like, that happy, like, child. And so I wonder for you, like, yeah, like, how do you stay still when there's so many cars driving by and ideas driving by?
I don't think they're all coming by time though. That's the first thing. And the other thing is sometimes it will sit your down. Like I remember for The Danger, I was taking the train home. I lived in the Bronx and NYU is of course down. I was at 42nd Street transferring.
Yes,
and this line, the old, the sick, and the fat are I forgot the word I used, are a something, I'll just say an affliction that God put for man to keep him in his place. I heard that line clear as day in my head. Clear as day. And I just sat down. I was like, okay, all right, I'm just gonna keep writing. And that's what I did. And it became this monologue for the central character to the play about the way God plays with us any way he wants to. And so she has made herself a sibling to God in order to not be privy to that power that he likes to wield. But that whole monologue, I missed 4 trains writing that monologue. So sometimes it comes like that. And it doesn't warn you. And I've heard Pearl Clegg, that's another really good book. I think it's called Notes to My Daughter or Letters to My Daughter. Pearl Clegg's autobiography. Within it, she talks about having to pull off the road to write things. And so, and you will, as you continue to write and you continue to kind of work, every now and then you'll get hit with something, you'll hear something, you're like, okay, let me, and it might not even be a character, right? It may let me just hear this thought out. Let me hear this thought all the way. And that's what it was that I was doing that day. I was kind of, for me, it was the character. I was like hearing Jim out, and she had a lot to say. I missed 4 trains. I got home about 2 hours late, but I had a really fucking good monologue.
So my next question is, you have talked about like these moments where you've had like these golden eggs, and like honestly, like your career is, first off, goals, etc. for like any writer like starting out, and like your bio, I ran out of breath having to list the accomplishments. I was like, and beats change. Like you could roll this stuff out for the girls. And so I wonder, like, what is the secret to, I mean, let's start from like the top really. What is the secret to a really good, like, award-winning play for you? Like, what's that secret that gets you the grant, that gets you the fellowship, that gets you in the room? Like, what do you think is that one thing that you're like, yo, me and Stacey Rose, I can bank on this thing to like get me, like, it has got you to those opportunities?
You know how you write an award-winning play? Not think
Yes.
about award-winning play. Like none of, like, I struggle so hard with America, and that play has won me a lot of money. That play get it. Remember I just told you about As Is. I wrote it in a weekend. I had 15 pages and I finished it in a weekend, and I have not touched it. I have not touched it. It got me my TV job. Baby, there are still typos in As Is. It's my TV job. It got you. The thing about those plays is that I mean them. Like, I'm not, like, I mean them. Like, right? I wrote the thing that frustrates me and explored it with characters. And like, As Is me. I'm a big Black woman, so I'm just writing big Black women. Like, really, when I say, like, there is no fucking substitute for being yourself and writing deep as you feel comfortable into your own truth. So Legacyland was a play that was probably the play and where I had to write my hardest, right?
Yeah.
So it's about this legacy of sex abuse and incest within a family. And
which that like a lot of like that's how like it's prevalent in a lot of Black communities, which is something that we should be writing about.
what I did. Here's what I did. One, I took care of myself writing that play. I was at Playwright Center, so I was in the right place. Had enough creative support, good therapist.
Yes.
Best thing I did for myself is make those characters not my family. And the truth telling that happens in that play. And it's not focused on accusations and exposure or anything like that. That play is about the fallout and what it does to familial relationships, because that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in the thing, because we all know it's happening, right? I'm interested in what happens because of the thing. For me, that's what's interesting to me. Like this whole business, all of these activists getting called out by the parents of these murdered children.
Yes.
And I have always been interested in that, because their voices, right? And so it's really the thing, like, yes, the thing, it's fucking horrible. Kids getting molested, incest, horrible, right? What happens to those relationships? And in this particular play, I intentionally made one child be the victim of the abuse. The other one was abused, but got jealous of the attention the one that was abused got. And so it's just sort of like there's the issue, right? But what's under the issue? And I think with America, it's, yes, America's racist and fucked up. But what America deals with as a play is how we're all complicit in it, including us, including them, and how we sometimes find ourselves on the sticky fly paper that is capitalism and misogyny and all of that. Even when we're just trying to fucking live, right? Even when we're to live, we inherently live we can't just decide we're not going to be capitalist in the middle of a capitalist society. I mean, good, you know what I mean? Don't, like, if you're taking public transit or you're driving, good luck with gas, good luck with, like, it's there, right? From in every little bit of things that we do, but it becomes a snare and it becomes a trap. And what I'm doing with America, it's about Black folks, but it's also about the tiny box of life that they put us in. Like, these folks have a meal, clothes, somewhere to stay. That's all people worry about, right? They don't really worry about much else. And in that way, we're all in that same trap that you see the actors in that play. So it's really always just kind of going just a little bit deeper than the surface issue, taking care of yourself while you're doing that, because that's not always easy. And yeah, I mean, the awards will or they won't. I think a lot of it, like, I've been fortunate, but like, you just never know how something you write will hit someone. You write because you want to write. You create because you want to create. If you're not seeing your work out in the world, put it up. I produced my work. When I got so fucking tired of everyone telling me how great The Danger was after I got out of grad school. Oh, someone's going to produce that. That's amazing. No one to this day. So you know what I did? I'm like, you know what? I love this play. I think this play is fucking amazing. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it up. And I did. And it was not easy, but I did, because I believed in the play. And I think as we believe in our work, whether your awards come or not is neither here nor there, right? We got to eat. So that's a different kind of thing, right? And we plan for that. But in terms of planning for who's going to give you what, child, I don't know. I wasn't looking for any of this, like, at all. It wasn't something like I applied for things. I haven't applied for anything in years because I know, like, other people need opportunities. So why would I still, but like, I got to a point where I accomplished this, and that. I don't need to accomplish all of them. I don't need all of them. I don't need to go to all the residents. I don't need to go, you know what I mean? Like, I apply for something, I don't get it 2 or 3 years in a row. I'm not applying anymore. I'm not applying to New Dramatists because I don't need that opportunity right now. I'm not applying, like, and it's not to talk shit about these organizations, but it's just like, yes, apply for everything, but also write your shit. Write your shit and do your shit. And everything else, like the path that is specifically yours, will lay itself out for you, because my path was not one I could have laid out for I literally, you cannot choose this path. It's
so how did you remain present then, I wonder? And because, like, ambiguity, I feel like, is, as for artists, is the most lustful thing we chase, but also the birth of our anxiety. So when you're sitting, like, for graduation too, like, how are you dealing with, like, or not even graduation really, when you're like just letting I mean, for those who are spiritual, like, I know for me, like, letting God lay out this path, or letting, like, whatever you may believe, like, lay out this path. What was that thing that just let you, like, remember, be still and know that I am Stacey?
I have a very grounded spiritual practice, like super grounded. Every day of my life, I get up, I journal, and I meditate every single day. And being in touch with people who ground you and make you humble, i.e., I have a 22-year-old son, keeps me real humble, keeps me real. I have a 70-year-old mother, keeps me real humble. She get like, what? So being around people who make me feel like I have my feet on the ground. Like, I can't be around people who are caught up in the hype of what the industry tries to tell us we should be caught up in the hype of. I spend the majority, like, I'm literally sitting in the apartment of a Chicago friend. We were just sitting out there talking about Marvel shows and eating chips and like that, savor that, because when you've worked and you look back, that's the things, and those are the people who are going to matter. Everything else is so, it's too fucking unpredictable. It's just, you can't live by the whims of this industry. You have to be grounded. And when you're in that phase where you're applying for everything, like, don't apply for things that feel like I could do this, or I might work here, but don't put all your eggs in the basket, right? Like, I applied for Many Voices 2 times, right? If I wouldn't have gotten it that second time, I probably would not have applied again to Playwright Center. When it's for you, it's for you. I'm gonna show you that. This happened to me twice in my career. The first time was getting into NYU. I applied to 5 grad schools. I got rejected by them all, including NYU. I called NYU. I got a rejection letter yet. That year they happened to have 2 programs. They had one in New York and had one in Singapore. That year, those programs shared applications. So they had sent my application to Singapore. They were like, you're a no for New York, and they're still reviewing in Singapore. I got an interview with Singapore. I got into Singapore. Singapore closed, and they transferred my acceptance to NYU New York. And then my life unfolded the way it is because I was supposed to be in New York. And it wasn't up to NYU because I got there. Same thing happened with Playwright Center. I applied for Many Voices the first year, got rejected. Second year, I hadn't heard is what it was. And I was on a social media break, so I didn't know they had already announced that someone else had gotten it.
Uh-oh.
Then I got a call saying that the person who got it couldn't do it. She was taking another program in Brooklyn and I was the alternate. I have learned, my career has taught me over and over and over. And anytime I get anxious, my friends who know remind me, remember that time when X, and I mean, these are just two examples. When I tell you when something is mine, it comes back to me. And you have to do that. Like,
Yeah.
really, you just have to believe that.
It's like claiming your truth ahead of like to the universe, really. Yeah.
Nobody, right? You don't know what life has for you, but the only thing that you can control is you, your own behavior, how you're caring for yourself, your writing, what you're creating. Like, those are the things. Like, think about the thing, even if you have to put it on a piece of paper on your wall. These are the things I'm in control of.
Yes.
These are the things I'm not in control of. You're not in control of the industry, critics, people who want to talk shit about you. You're not in control of anybody but you.
Yeah.
And the things that you do.
Can we talk about produce? Because you talk about how, like, with The Danger, you talked about like going from that play, like everyone's gonna do this, blah, 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 but then you produce like that play on your own. And now you also like
just
like
out run, I might add, a sold out run.
And exactly. And so that makes me ask, because I, as a player, have had a time where I produced my own work from like a school project. So I knew I didn't have to compensate. But when I'm in school and I'm also still trying to get some of my plays out there, and now that we're on Zoom, thank God, and we have all these different like theater people, like everybody, like for once, like theater is actually being accessible like through streaming and like how, what would be your tip for producing your own work and pulling together people to put that work out there?
Pick people you can trust. Work with your friends only if you know, trust them. I know you love your friends. You might not always be able to work with your friends.
Exactly.
Leave room for grace. Leave room for create the environment you would want to work in. Patience is key. Laughter is key. Rituals are key. Have something y'all do every time you come in to work. Every time you set, be it a check-in or whatever, do something that grounds you in reality and not like centers the work in a healthy way, not centers the work in a way that feels very high stakes and emotionally damaging. I work with people who are about that life, but who are also I love. And whose walk I've watched and admired and things and people I know just in their own professional lives, what their walk is. And yeah.
And what would you say now, like that you're, because I don't like to say top of a career, because I feel like as artists we have the unique challenge of like ever changing, ever growing.
Yeah, I'm in a good.
Yeah, like being in a comfortable place now. That's the best way I would like to say. Like now that you're like in a comfortable place, like working with Black Hollywood legends like Spike Lee and Angela Bassett. Like, can you talk about like your experience for that? Like working as like a staff writer and then working as a script coordinator and writer's assistant, and like the difference and what it means to be on set, just that vibe. Like,
so a writer's assistant, particularly, especially for a new show, which I was on She's Gotta Have It. They're critical, and they're critical in every show, but particularly in a new show, because you are creating new worlds, new characters, all this stuff, and it is your job to capture all of that, to track the conversations from today, to collate the information into something, like you have to synthesize the information into something the writers can go back and look at and go, okay, so tomorrow in the room, I want to X, right? So you're making information that's useful. Like what was an honor for me was to be able to create the Bible for that show based on the notes and stuff that came out of the room. Like I was able to put that together. I have all of the information that was initially written for every character, because I was in there writing the notes for it. It's a very special thing, particularly with a new show. Spike is Spike. I'm not gonna bullshit you. He is not the easiest man to work for. But I learned a ton. And I'm really grateful for that experience. Really, really. Like, he often through, like, when I tell you after that, I knew I could do anything, because the shit he would throw at me left and right. And it was like comical, like the amount of things he would throw at me at the last. And he's like, hey, can you put together this? And I'm like, what? And so I would go, like I would go do it outside of the work that I had to do for being a writer's assistant. And, you know, I would probably finish my last thing at 2 a.m. and fall asleep after being in Brooklyn at 7. So yeah, there was that. I mean, I haven't worked up close and personal with Angela yet because of COVID. We shot from a distance, but I got to meet her on Zoom, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. She is just as wonderful as you think she might be. It was a thrill to watch her speak my words for the first time. And it's just, I counted all amazing. I didn't plan for any of this. And so, like, me and my friend were talking about how we're kind of both co-Forrest Gumps of the industry. Like, it's just random shit just keeps happening. I'm just running with it. Like, it's like, okay, so here's the thing, you know, like, I got to meet Lee Daniels recently. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Like, it's just sort of like, none of this was expected. Like, so it's just sort of like, okay, that's gravy. Like, what's next?
What would your biggest advice be to yourself then? Like, when the Stacey that was in grad school, the Stacey that was applying for grad school, the Stacey that was producing her own work at the start, like, really, what would be your advice to that person now, looking at that person if they were present in this interview, I wonder?
Listen to your friend. They're right. It's gonna happen. Calm down. Because my fear at that time was that the stakes were so high. The stakes were so high, and that I had left my son, and he was like in high school. If you don't walk in, go ahead. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, thank you. We're almost done. Okay. But I just was because I had risked so much to do this thing that I did not know how it was going to pan out. I was always on edge that nothing was going to happen, and I had risked all of this for nothing, and I would be working in respiratory therapy for the rest of my life. Like, that was my constant drone to myself. And if, like, now it's just like, for sure, listen to your friends. They said it was going to happen. Like, I never thought I was going to break into television. Never, never, never. I was very upset about this. And they all kept saying it's gonna happen. And it did, and not when I expected it.
And what do you do when, like, I mean, what if you're in a place where you don't know your community yet, or your friends, and you just have you?
That's where that spiritual practice comes in. It's like, you have to ground yourself in a truth that you understand. You know what I mean? Like, you have to ground yourself.
You have to ground yourself. Like, there's a beauty in isolation, like in spirituality. Yeah. Like, every artist takes that time.
Yeah, you have to, this business cannot be your higher power. I say all that to say, this business is not your higher power. Your career is not your higher power. It is not the thing that will sustain you when you lose someone you love, because you will. You know, the thing that's going to sustain you when you lose someone you love is a great spiritual practice and friends and family, and function that way regardless. You know, I think about who's going to be wiping my ass when I'm old. That's what I think about. And it won't be anybody in the American theater.
I know that's right.
Yeah. So I don't take any of these days for granted at all.
Yeah. I mean, there is no better way to end an interview than with that. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, y'all, this will be available on our YouTube channel for you guys to watch. Thank you for coming to the Sit Down series and tuning in on your own special times. Thank you again to the Hub, Talvin Wilkes, Stacey Rose. Again, I'm gonna give you an applause right here. Just an applause right here. You know, a little black applause, and all that is to say. Thank you so much for
back. I'm gonna give you one back. You know why? Because I couldn't change my hands black quick enough, so you're gonna have to go with these generic orange ones. But you bounced back today, and you produced your ass off today. That's what you did.
Thank you.
You produced your ass off today. You problem solved in real time. You did not fall apart. Right?
I did it.
Nope, you got it done. And now the interview's recorded. And there you are.
Stacey,
you're doing the thing. You're doing the thing. Someone told me that earlier in my career. I had a couple articles in different papers around town and all of this stuff. And I was like, Carlton, how am I going to become a writer? He's like, Stacey, you're doing it. And you're doing it. You know that. You have to know that you were doing it. All right, Waribo? You're doing it.
I will remember that.
You're already a theater artist. You're already a playwright. You're already. You're doing the fucking thing, and you'll blink and you'll look back and you'll be like, yeah, I've been doing the thing. All right.
I will. And like, honestly, it's just, again, thank you so much for coming. Like, I still remember your new play with the seniors from my freshman year. And just that, like, use of hip hop, like, is it, if I may, like, I'm working on a play right now. Is it okay if I sent that to you to just read on your own time whenever?
Absolutely. Send it over.
Cool. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mwah.
Mwah. Bye, Stacey.
Bye.